Once upon a time, there was a bar in Gianai, a place where a guy compliments the protagonist, but the protagonist bumps his glass and tells him that he doesn't want to hear such things. So the guy excuses himself by saying that since he is good at breaking the ice, they will be fine. But the protagonist, contemplating his glass of wine, wonders when he stopped being a normal person to be a respected person. However, this did not satiate his life, because according to his words, only wine could satiate him, because no one around him is genuine in his thoughts, as they always approach him out of mere interest. Then the fat guy introduces him to a floozy, who tells him in a roundabout way that she is envious of the woman who is the wife of the prota, but the fat guy tells her very discreetly that the prota has no commitment. To which the tart is cajoled and sits next to the protagonist and cozies up to him, telling him that she was lucky to have met him, and tells him that he must find a balance with his family and work, and hands him a business card, as well as several other girls. After drinking, the prota leaves for home, but when he arrives he notices that there is a kitten under his car. So he picks it up and tells him that thank goodness he checked and didn't run it over, followed by letting it go. And when he gets back in his car, he sees the kitten with what looks like his parents. So the prota reflects that he hasn't seen his parents in a while, so he decides to go see them. But first he gets rid of the girl's business cards and starts listening to music. But in a moment of carelessness, the prota gets into an oncoming lane and suffers a tragic accident. However, he comes to his senses and sees a girl in front of him and a boy's voice telling him to stop smoking. Then the prota, confused, sees his reflection and considers that he went back to the past. So the protagonist, confused by what is happening, does not hear the voices of his friends until a guy reproaches him for his actions in front of the rejection of the blue dress, trying to give him a motivational message, but only generated an awkward silence. And as a thug aspect, the prota asks the guy who he is. Then the guy freaks out and tells the blue-haired girl to leave them alone. So the girl tells him to stop pretending that she told him she would only date until after college, and threatens to charge him to his mom if she sees him smoking again, which leaves the prota shocked. So the prota, grumbling, asks her how she knows about his mother, but the girl hands him a bottle of water and tells him to wash up. However, the prota reluctantly says no, but the annoyed girl leaves him the bottle of water and leaves with his friend. So the protagonist asks aloud if he confessed or something. Then the boy who was next to him puts his arm on his shoulder and tells him not to pretend, but the prota does not recognize him and asks who he is. This annoys his friend. He claims and scolds him for having confessed while drunk the night before, so they both go to get their graduation certificate. And when he arrives to receive it, he runs into a bald guy, which causes surprise in the protagonist because he had died of cancer in the lungs, but he could not attend his funeral. So the protagonist sees a pack of cigarettes that were his professor's and warns him that he should quit smoking for his health, so he takes them away. Then the guy from earlier was criticizing that the prota was allowed to enter a university to the prota. But at that, the prota comes out and starts flirting with Rongyu, and conversing they find out that they will be studying in nearby university. And after a show of jealousy from the guy who accompanied Rongyu, the prota regrets that he came back at a time when he had already finished high school. Past this moment, the prota walks happily because he will be able to see his parents again after a long time. But suddenly the prota is stopped by Rongyu. The latter tells him that they are the only ones who didn't leave him a message in his classmate record. So the prota looks wistfully as Rongyu hands him his register, and Rongyu tells him that whatever he writes will be a memento for her. Then the simp friend who was with Rongyu becomes jealous again and tells the prota to fix his gaze on the book. Blushing Rongyu, who claims him and asks what he was looking at, but the clever prota changes the conversation. And as he contemplates the pages and messages, the prota feels nostalgic for what he is living, but comes to a love poem that one of them plagiarized, something that the prota sees the message as very corny. But at that, Rongyu asks him to stop reading the messages and write some message in some blank space. But since the prota hadn't thought of anything, he gives it to his friend to write first. So the boy writes the first thing that came to his mind, and after his friend finishes writing, the prota, although undecided of what he wants to write, proceeds to write his message. Then Rongyu with a smile says that it is well written, and he tells the prota that he will not tell his mother that he saw him smoking, but asks him not to do it again. Then the simp boy tells him to leave because it is getting dark. Then the prota's friend angrily claims that he forced him to write first, so the prota hugs him and asks him if he will try to go after Rongyu. After a while, the prota and his friend part ways and the prota heads home, but as he walks, all the memories of his life up to the night he killed himself flash through his mind, and he nostalgically knocks on the door of his house as he did when he was a young man. And after being greeted by his mother and her giving him a piece of melon and sending him for a bath, the prota feels happy about what he is experiencing again. The prota's mother was very excited to see the prota's admission letter and starts daydreaming about the future that awaits them now. While the prota teases because in the future he hadn't even married, and in that he thinks that he should do something with his father so as not to overload him with the things of his university. At that his father arrives and the prota welcomes him with joy, and seeing his son he lights the air, but at that the prota's mother appears, scolding him for believing that he had smoked again. But the prota tells her that they are not his, that it was that one of his teachers had given it to him. Then his mother gets angrier and throws them and asks her husband if he is not going to tell her anything. However, his father tells him to at least wait until he is in college, so he decides to keep them, but his wife scolds him. After this, the prota's parents have a conversation about how they are both making mistakes in raising their son. Meanwhile, the prota in his bed reflects that he will not return to his world, and the next morning he wakes up early, surprising his mother. This one, hearing that her son was hungry, tells him to manage alone if he wants to eat, that she will continue sleeping. Then the prota happily goes to a food stall and tries to buy 2 omelets, but he had forgotten that he was not in his time and had no money nor his mom had given him. So he cancels the order, and by pure chance he meets Rongyu. The latter, upon seeing him, thinks he was waiting for her to flirt with her, so he retorts by saying that she will only fall in love after college, which leaves the prota confused and even considers her crazy. Rongyu confronts the prota and tells him that she won't fall for his strategy, because she is determined to get a partner once she graduates from college, claiming that she doesn't want to be distracted, while the prota analyzes that her motives have been altered over the years. So the prota, not to take her wrong, tells her that she was right, so to change the situation he invites her to breakfast and continue talking. Then Rongyu blushes a little and tells him that she should invite him because he is always taking care of her. However, the prota interrupts her and expresses that he can't allow that, so he tells her that he knows a place that makes pretty good steamed buns. Although confused, she accepts. Upon arriving and while eating, Rongyu is greeted by a guy who then scolds the prota, who tells her that she shouldn't eat in such a careless way. However, the prota confidently mentions that he will have an excellent condition until he is 35 for sure. These words impress Rongyu, because he said it with utmost confidence as if he knew it. Then the prota tells her that he knows it because he went to a fortune teller who told him, and that he would also be rich, but he would not have the fortune to have a special person by his side, a wife. Then Rongyu is incredulous, but the prota, making use of the lip service, convinces her, until he begins to read her palm. But when he got to the part of love, he courts her, saying that she has her husband right in front of her. Then Rongyu gets upset. After this, the prota gets up and leaves, telling the lady that his girlfriend will pay for him. But he crosses paths with a familiar policeman, who turned out to be Rongyu's relative, father, and seeing that he had been accused, the prota says goodbye and leaves in a panic. Some time later, the main character was on a bus going to the university, while his friend was talking and telling him with great enthusiasm everything they would experience at the university and the girls they would meet. However, the main character was not enthusiastic, because he had already experienced it in the past. So as his friend was still insistent, the prota tells him to shut up and go to sleep. He also tells him that they have not even taken the road. But his friend tells him that he has just seen wrong, something that changes the attitude of the prota, who begins to look for her desperately. But the prota refrains from greeting her to avoid problems. However, she catches a glimpse of him, but looks at him angrily. Then the bus driver tells Rongyu's father that she can travel with them, because they are going to the same place. Rongyu's rich friend arrives with his own car and tells Rongyu's father that he can take her more comfortably. But Rongyu's father analyzes this with great distress, so he asks Rongyu where she wants to go, to which she turns to see the bus and answers that she wants to go on the bus. Then the prota very coldly asks his friend to move to a seat in the back so that Rongyu can sit next to him. However, his friend gets upset and asks him why he doesn't go to the other seats and waits for Rongyu to sit next to him. But the prota makes the excuse that the sun hurts him. So in the end, his friend agrees and Rongyu sits next to the prota. So Rongyu's father puts his daughter in charge of him. Late in the ride, the prota tells Rongyu that he woke up early and will fall asleep. Then Rongyu thinks that he just wants to avoid talking about what he did to him. After another, while they arrive at a bridge that seems to impress Rongyu, but not the prota, and he asks her why he doesn't surprise her, and she tells him that she already knew him, and after that, in some cheeky romance situations, they arrive at their destination. The prota's friend is upset about what he just experienced, so the prota tells him that he had warned him. Then Rongyu looks confused at the prota, which sees that he doesn't bring clothes, and the prota explains that he can ask his mother to send him the clothes later. So Rongyu is surprised, and after that the prota tells her how she can get to her university, confessing that he had already made plans with his friend to go visit a famous park in the city, telling Rongyu that they will get in touch later. Then Rongyu surprisingly yells at the Prota the promise he had made to his father. So the Prota turns and asks him to calm down or they will generate a wrong idea to other people and he won't be able to have a girlfriend. These words upset Rongyu, so the Prota proposes to accompany her to take the bus, but Rongyu asks him if he wants to leave her behind. Then the Prota tries to calm her down, but Rongyu angrily bites him and the other students start to label the Prota as a bad guy. At the bus stop, the Prota feels that his trajectory will be affected by what happened just now, while Rongyu feels questioned to have reacted like that when the Prota told him that he wanted to have another girl, when she rejected him. So after a while of silence, Rongyu looks at the Prota with a withheld cry, so the Prota's friend leaves them alone, telling the Prota that they will go to the park another time, and then the Prota and Rongyu decide to head to Rongyu's school. After dropping Rongyu off at her school, the Prota is relieved that his problem with her is over, but he remembers that she got angry when a girl in Rongyu's dorm gave him the phone number to call them. So once the Prota arrives at his college, he can't help but feel nostalgic, for it had been more than 10 years since he had crossed the gates of his college. But at that, a girl walking in a hurry bumps into him. But the Prota was charmed by the girl's tenderness, as she sweetly apologizes and continues on her way in a hurry. It is in that way that the Prota feels that the girl is familiar to him, but he is not able to locate her. So after that, the Prota proceeds to fill out his form and is reunited with a friend with whom he studied 4 years ago. And after introducing himself and filling out the form, the Prota is given a room, while the Prota wished that in that world he would become the class president. While walking through the facilities, the Prota contemplated the beautiful girls who in that university studied, but he could not present himself with those facades. So he sets out to find a way to earn money. So he comes to a board where there are different job proposals, and the Prota takes one. So after some time has passed and it being late, the Prota arrives at his room, in which he feels homesick, and upon entering, he meets his roommates who introduce themselves one by one and who receive him with pleasure. Then one of them offers them cigarettes, but only 2 of the 6 refrain from taking them, while the Prota contemplates with nostalgia the behavior of his companions. Then the Prota looks with displeasure at a room and tells himself that he must clean it or he will be stinking up his room for the 4 years. Then his roommates notice the clattering that the Prota makes and ask him what he is doing. Then the Prota tells them that that area is among the most affected and that they should have better hygiene so that it will give them more comfort. Seeing his attitude, his classmates are amazed and begin to exalt the Prota to the point of saying that they want him to be the leader of the dormitory. So they want to know if he agrees to carry all kinds of responsibilities that comes with being a leader. So when they ask him if they can help him, he says that he can take care of it. The next morning, the red-haired fellow put the volume on his phone up pretty loud and annoyed the lead. But the fellow with the glasses reminds them that on that day they must wear the military uniform. So the lead enthusiastically exclaims that they must meet the girls, exciting his other fellows. However, upon arrival, they are disappointed because the girls in his class are not very attractive. Then the Prota tells them that he will go to get acquainted with them and asks them if they want to go. But these embarrassed dissent, in that the Prota meets her friend from high school. And after introducing himself, his classmates argue that they cannot compete against someone like him because he is a bad boy of those who attracts girls. But in that he meets the girl he bumped into the other day, and after her friend introduces her, she leaves embarrassed. Then her friend tells him her problems, that she was orphaned and has debts, has low self-esteem. Then the Prota, remembering her name, remembers that she in her past life she fascinated everyone with her beauty, so the Prota was smitten and now he doesn't want to let her lose again. The class gathered. The teacher wants everyone to introduce themselves. At that, a redhead stands up and introduces herself. She makes the Prota's classmates drool considering her a beauty. But the Prota sees them as idiots. At that, the shy girl with low self-esteem named Yaochu introduces herself. But the Prota's friends, not seeing her face well, don't give her a good score. Then the teacher expresses that he wanted to decree the class president, but postpones it for the week after that. Then his classmates motivate the Prota to become the class president and help them to solve the problems in the future. This conversation was overheard by the Prota's friend, and she mentalizes that she will have to prepare herself to fight for the presidency, and proceeds to tell Yaochu not to trust men who talk nice to her. Following that, the girls were terrified because the instructor wanted to cut their hair, and many of them had quite long hair, so they didn't want to cut it. Then the Prota's friend who decides to go talk to her teacher. But the Prota, in order to get points to be elected as president, faces the military instructor and asks him if it is explicit in the regulations that college students must cut their hair for that class. As the instructor had no arguments to defend his position before the Prota or the others, he decides to let him pass. This manages to impress several girls, who consider that the girls will surely go after him, then who gets angry to see that he lost against the prota. But the instructor tells the prota that for smoking in his class he must give 10 laps, punishment that causes grace in one of his companions. So the prota also betrays him, saying that he had also smoked, and so the two receive the punishment. And then his classmate yells at the prota for having involved him. Despite the prota's efforts, some girls cannot empathize with a man as president because it is more difficult for them to talk about their problems than with a girl. Then the prota has an idea and goes to talk to his teacher. But seeing that his teacher has problems with his schedule to pick up his daughter, the prota proposes to help him because he knows well the place where his daughter was. Then the teacher trusts the prota and entrusts him to pick up his daughter. The prota arrives at the kindergarten, but the teacher with distrust asks him where Jae-hyui's father is, so the prota tells her what happened, even invites her to call him, so she with annoyance proceeds to call him. Then she calls the prota's teacher and asks him if what the prota was telling her is true. Then the teacher receives the indication that the prota should give her his ID number, so the prota proceeds to give it to her and thus confirm his identity in front of his teacher and Jae-hyui's teacher. So the teacher apologizes for being so suspicious, but the prota tells her that he understands her. Then the teacher leaves the girl to the prota. So the prota and the girl leave, and the prota takes the girl out to eat and asks her if she knows her teacher's number or a social network, but the girl cheerfully says she doesn't know. Come the evening, the prota gives his teacher his daughter, and as a token of gratitude his teacher's wife gives him a bag full of grapes and cherries, as well as inviting him to have dinner with them on the weekend. So his teacher insists the prota take the fruit and he will accompany him to the bus stop. Back at the university, the prota is sitting on a bench waiting for Rongyu, who, although he was about to go to sleep, went to the prota's call, and the prota gives him the fruit that his teacher's wife gave him. So Rongyu blushes and asks him not to buy expensive fruit. But in that comes a nerdy guy who is Rongyu's friend, and after a while of conversation and noticing the prota asks him who he is. So the prota introduces himself and tries to give him a cigarette, but the guy refuses and leaves. So Rongyu tells the prota that she met him once when he came to ask for an assistant, and asked her for the favor, although she refused. But the prota does nothing but smoke, which annoys Rongyu and asks him if he hasn't thought about his future. To which the prota tells him that he wants to go after a girl, and through some questions Rongyu asks the prota. The prota thinks it's her and leaves with a hot face, which confuses the prota because he was talking about Yaochu. After the week that the teacher gave them to get acquainted with each other has passed, he decides to proceed with the election of the class president. So he invites the students to run for office voluntarily. A classmate of the prota desperately insists the prota to run, because if a girl becomes the president, he won't be able to skip class. In the first instance, who stands up first, introduces herself, gives her speech and proposals why she should be chosen as class president, reminding them that she was very helpful in helping them register and that she will use her skills to help them all. Whose words excite many of the classmates, who shower who with flowers. Even the teacher prompts them all to copy her spirit, then asks if there is another volunteer. So at that the prota comes down the stairs and catches a glimpse of Yaochu, which embarrasses her greatly. So the prota also proceeds to give a motivational speech and present her proposal, promising them a meaningful life in the university. Then the teacher praises the prota's skills that make him a good leader. And after a close vote of 25 to 27, the prota would be left with the victory and the title of class president for that year, which surprises Hu and excites the boys. Then Hu annoyingly tells Yaochu to never trust a man, while the latter embarrassedly exclaims that she will remember. After this, Hu continues to be upset, but is stopped by the prota, who invites her and Yaochu to talk about the class presidency. But Hu asks if he challenged her to romance her. But the prota stresses that it's not his intentions. So once at the restaurant, the prota gives Hu his card to cancel their dinner, so Hu takes it and carries it away, leaving the prota and Yaochu alone. The prota can't stop looking at Yaochu with lewd thoughts, and when he looks at her and sees that she smiled at him, he bursts with shame. After a while, Hu arrives and tells the prota that he spent 117 yuan. But the prota doesn't give it importance, and when they sit down to eat, Hu asks him what he wanted to tell him, so the prota mentions that he wants to give him the position of class president, a proposal that not only surprises Hu, but also Yaochu. This impressed Hu, who asks him if he is crazy. The prota denies being crazy, but he wants to know why she wants to be the class president. Then she gives him a false answer. So the prota asks her to give him the selfish answer. So Hu comes clean and tells him that for the position she wants to have, it will be good for her to have the experience. Then Hu confronts the prota asking her motives to him, to which the prota mentions that she just wants to make money, something that doesn't seem to have a relation one to the other, according to Hu. So the prota explains how she will use her position to achieve her goal, something that makes Hu reproach her. Then the prota tells her that she also wants to do the same. So the discussion of the two goes on for a while, making Yaochu uncomfortable, who wants to leave, but the prota doesn't let her and gives her some shrimps, under the excuse that she can't refuse them because he already bought them for her. But as Yaochu refuses because she wants to eat a bun, the prota gives her a bite and judges her taste. And after a constant insult from Hu to the prota for what he did, the prota explains to her how they will develop the transition of changing positions, which does not seem to convince Hu. But the prota pleads that if she refuses, he will just have to try harder, but she will have no more chances. But as she still does not trust his word, the prota tells her that he is always true to his word, words that astonish Hu. The prota's words make Hu blush, so Hu, before getting carried away by emotions or getting fooled according to her, she stands up and exclaims that they just closed the deal, and tells Yaochu to leave, not to waste her time there anymore. And as they leave, the prota smiles and in her mind says it's done. A voice exclaims that they will be celebrating the completion of their military training and because it is their first college freshman reunion. Then Rongyu's simp states that they should meet more often. Then the prota sees his friend Sabet and asks him why, to which the latter mentions that in his class there are only 2 girls, so he feels just like a monk, to which the prota asks how pretty they are. But the silence of his friend confirms that they are not so much, so the simp guy expresses that this should not be his goal. Then the prota looks at Rongyu and leans on her to reach some chopsticks, act that causes admiration in his friend, because he wants to do those things without so much fear. Then Rongyu takes the floor and proposes that each one says what achievements they have obtained until that moment. So the simp wanted to make the prota look bad and opines that the prota be the one to start. So the prota tells that he is the president of the class, leaving his 3 friends perplexed. Even his best friend does not believe him. So the simp denigrates that this is true because he does not have the quality. Followed by this, it is the turn of Sibo, the best friend of the prota. He tells of the incredible food establishments that are in his university. It is the turn of the simp boy, who had prepared to brag about his university. But in that, Hu arrives and they talk about his responsibilities as president. At that, Hu spots Rongyu and warns the simp not to play with Yaochu and Rongyu's feelings, although he says it as a Chinese proverb. When he confirms what the simp had said, his friends are astonished, especially Rongyu. So the simp shouts that he will also become president. The simp's friend speculates that it is a strategy to captivate Rongyu, but Rongyu denies it. And after saying goodbye, Rongyu calls the prota and voices that she is glad for what he is doing for her and asks him to wait for her. So the prota wonders why she always considers that he is in love with her. Some time later, the protagonist arrives at a logistics building and notices that there are several employees. So the prota approaches one of these and asks for the manager, to which he kindly tells him that he is on the 2nd floor. Then the protagonist enters the manager's office, and the manager asks him what he wants, and the protagonist tells him that he saw an ad for a part-time job and wanted to apply. However, the manager denies him the job because there was already someone from his university hired. So the protagonist asks him how he could take the job away from that person. So the manager questions him that it doesn't sound right what he means. However, the prota mentions that everything is for money and repeats his question again. So the manager states that he finds it interesting and it catches his attention, but he can't accept to change the person coming from his university. So the manager proposes him to be someone more efficient, and then he will consider it. Then the prota decides to increase his references from others, and for that he has to join the student union. And when the prota enters the place where the club registration was taking place, he meets again the guy who looked at him with disgust. And when the prota was going to introduce himself, the prota interrupts him and the guy exclaims that he doesn't qualify because he is not a girl. Then the prota gets upset for interrupting him. Even one of his classmates tells him because of the condition that he had to be a girl. Then the guy starts to argue why they need a girl. So upset about the discrimination, the prota rebukes his senior and, frightening everyone in the room, he tells her that he would understand if she didn't have the qualifications for the job. But he doesn't tolerate it being discriminatory. So he expresses to her that the important thing is to finish the task and gender is not a factor in its resolution. And under his own logic, he should get out of there too since he is a man. The room turned into a ruckus, but at that a guy arrives who calls for order and threatens the prota with calling the security department. And when the prota asks who he is, the prota tells him that he is the vice president of the student union and asks him if he has any complaints about it. The prota challenges the vice president to call security. Seeing his very calm attitude, the vice president is astonished and asks him for his name and that of his guardian. So the prota gives them to him, again astonishing the vice president. While they were talking, an angry mob of students were encouraging the prota not to be intimidated, Even some were ready to break their mother's hearts with the one who touches the prota. So the girl had to intervene and ask him not to fight, to let him pass the first interview. The prota seems calmer. But again, the guy who saw him with disgust tells him that a rookie can never have his size. So the prota proudly questions the basis of the guy's words. Then the vice president stresses what his duties are and asks the prota if he is qualified to fulfill them. So the prota, knowing that the glass's vice president could do it, he could do it too, leaving the vice president surprised. This begins with pressure from the new students, who demand a change of vice president. Then the guy with the glasses, to try to appease the waters, proposes to carry out a contest in which they must get more sponsors for a party for the first year. The one who gets more, then both accept, and the prota pressures the vice president that if he loses he will not break his word. Beginning the contest, the vice president is assigned a place that gives him his sponsorship. But the prota is given one that the guy exclaims reluctantly that he has too many debts to sponsor the party. Then the prota tells him that if he helps him with his debts, he will give him for the sponsorship. That's how he gets going and reaches an agreement with the first one, to whom the guy from the stationery store owes money. The prota arrives before the fruit shop guy who owed the stationery guy, but some of the prota's companions are intimidated by the aura the guy emanates. So the prota tells them that if they don't want to go, he can go alone. Then his companions are filled with courage and don't back down. The prota's motivation seems to intimidate the vice president, as the prota arrives at the fruit shop guy's stall and the old man asks them what they want, to which the prota mentions that he doesn't want fruit, he's just coming on behalf of the old man from the stationery store to collect what he owes him. So the old man gets upset and scares the prota's classmates. However, the prota does not back down and tells him that he will collect the 35 he owes him. Then the old man is amazed that the prota will not be scared and asks him why he did not know that they were related. So the prota says that is of no importance, and to pay him what he owes him. But the old man claims that he doesn't owe 35. However, the prota doesn't back down and keeps pushing and tells the old man that he is accompanied by his college buddies and that if he refuses to pay they will plunder all his fruit until the debt is paid off. Then the old man, annoyed, shouts that he only owes 25 and goes to get the promissory note that proves that the debt was 25, which he presents to the prota. Then the prota tells him that he already knew and mentions that he only did it so that he himself will be in evidence before everyone. So the old man, being pressured by the students and an officer, gives the money to the prota. He then takes the money to the stationery guy, but he takes it from him, since it was the agreement, and gives 501 to the vice president, confirming that he got more patronage than the current vice president. However, the latter refused to resign from his post. Then one of the prota's colleagues maleficently thinks that he will not be removed from his post unless his reputation is affected. The prota and his roommates were playing some typical games among men when they are suddenly informed of what was going on by another of the roommates, that their long-haired roommate was drunk and had picked a fight in the vice president's room. Upon arrival, there was a huge crowd of students contemplating what had happened. So the prota feels responsible for draining the waters between the two sides and enters the room where the vice president, his roommate, and two teachers were. And the prota's teacher asks him if he knows or is responsible for what happened there. So the prota assumes that the vice president accused him of being responsible. So the prota gets all the blame to protect his roommate. So their teacher dictates them that they should apologize to the vice president. And then the prota should write a reflection about what he did, and then he should go through his sanction. So the prota does in a good way everything ordered. But after being left alone, the prota tells the vice president that he is saved because he is a college student. Then the prota and his classmates go back to their room, while the two teachers talk about what happened and that it was obvious what the prota did. But the vice president's teacher is aware that his student provoked them because of something that happened in the morning. Once in the room, the prota accepts his friend's apology and tells him that thanks to what he did, the vice president's reputation has fallen. The next day, the prota is called by those from the student union who ask him if he will be ready to take over, to which the prota answers in the affirmative. Then the students on the council mention that the vice president had decided to resign voluntarily, and they unanimously elected the prota as a replacement. The former vice president then stands up and claims that appointing him will make them regret it, and then the prota leaves, leaving the other members to worry. On a holiday, the prota and his friends were waiting for Rong Yu's father to come and pick them up, but the prota claims that they could leave by bus. Rong Yu's father arrives and they all sit down on the banquette. The prota tricked the simp boy to sit next to Rong Yu. Once in the car, the simp asks Rong Yu if she joined any clubs since they last saw each other, but she tells him she had a hard time choosing one, so he says he joined one. Zibo says he was roofed, and the prota comments that he became the vice president, something the simp boy clearly didn't believe him, even teases the prota. However, Rongyu's dad noticed that he wasn't lying. So the prota refrains from talking to him and does not give importance to his words. Then Rongyu's father leaves them in a park. Then the simp offers to carry Rongyu's suitcase. But Rongyu asks the favor to the prota, and while they were walking, Rongyu offers a dango to the prota, who eats it reluctantly, and at that he manages to see that his father was around. The prota and Zibo go to a nightclub, and while the prota is playing pool, Zibo looks at some girls and asks him how can they dress like that if they are in cold weather. To which the prota says it's because they are beautiful. Then when the prota was sitting down, a girl comes up to him to offer him a drink, but the prota tells her that his friend is the virgin, to go play with him. Then the girl goes and plays with him. After a while, the prota and Zibo leave the club, while Zibo complains to him for leaving so early, but the prota tells him that he can stay. But while they were walking, the protagonist bumps into Rongyu, who is accompanied, and looks at him with astonishment. Then the protagonist approaches and asks him if the party is over. Then Rongyu gets upset because he lied to her. Even Rongyu's friend mentions that she was considering accepting him, but she interrupts him and leaves the drink in her hand and runs away with her friend behind her, insulting the prota. Then Zibo tells the prota that he thinks Rongyu is in love with him. Followed by this, the prota starts calling Rongyu's house again and again to talk to her, but her father sadly lied to the prota because his daughter didn't want to talk. Then the prota asks him to tell his daughter that he will go back to school, so the father tells her, and seeing her so sad, he asks Rongyu if she and the prota are in love, but she is with Will-go denies it. While the prota was preparing to leave and decided not to receive the money from his mother, claiming that he still has money, so he says goodbye, leaving his mother with a huge feeling fear because her son is making his life, and asks her husband if he knows someone who wants to marry him when he finishes college, and the father expresses yes. When the prota returned to school, he was unfortunate that he got caught in a downpour, leaving him soaked. When at that Yaochu manages to spot the prota and he sees her, then Yaochu decides to run away from him, but the prota stops her and tells her that he won't hurt her. Then the prota asks her to join him for lunch, but she is full of embarrassment. She doesn't say anything, and he asks her if she doesn't want to, although she looks more like a stalker. So she accepts, and the prota asks her to invite him to a place that sells stews for $50, which makes Yaochu suffer. So she goes to her room and then returns without an umbrella, which upset the prota because one of her classmates asked her to do so. Arriving at the cafeteria, Yaochu orders and pays for the food. Once they are seated and ready to eat, the prota asks her if that purchase exhausted her budget, to which Yaochu says she still has some savings and can still do a part-time job. So the prota proposes that she be his girlfriend, which scares Yaochu away, and she tells him that she doesn't want to talk about it. So the prota says he understands her and won't talk about it. At that, Yaochu remembers that who warned her to watch out for the prota. Then they both leave, but the prota leaves an envelope on the table for Yaochu, who is shocked to see what it contained. On another occasion, the prota arrives at her teacher's house to give them some typical foods from their region. So in return for their kindness, the teacher invites the prota to eat with them, and the girl tells the prota that she already has her teacher's social network. After dinner, the prota was about to leave, and his teacher asks him to help Yaochu with the matter of a scholarship they give her because of her condition, so the prota accepts. Another day of classes arrives, and all of the prota's classmates were complaining about resuming classes. But then Hu arrives looking for the prota and questions him about his intentions by leaving Yaochu that envelope, to which the prota tells him that he doesn't want to hurt her. Then Hu questions him by telling him that by leaving him $500 it looks like he is stalking her. So the prota promises not to do anything bad to Yaochu, and if she refuses to be his partner he won't force her. So Hu believes him only because he knows that if he lies that would denigrate him. Then Hu tells him that they should find some way for boys and girls to interact, so the prota proposes something. After this, the prota complains that he hadn't told him about Yaochu, but Hu mentions that he has everything under control. Nevertheless, the prota offers his help. Later, Yaochu is told by Yaochu that the prota will help them, and when he stops by to talk to the youth league, this makes Yaochu burst out in embarrassment. Then the prota, Hu and Yaochu arrives at the office of the meeting committee, and the guy there tells Hu that they are making the arrangements. So Hu asks how long it will take, and this guy with disinterest tells him that little or not so little. These words anger Hu, who says she has been after them since before the vacation. However, the guy tells her that this is the way the processes are to handle that case. Then Hu desperately appeals to all the suffering Yaochu is going through. However, the guy doesn't say anything to her, and Hu gets angry and tells him so to his face. Then the guy also gets angry and tells her to handle it herself. However, the prota and Yaochu take her out of the office, and once outside, crying for not knowing what to do, the prota asks Yaochu for Yaochu's documents from Hu, and Hu asks him if he can do anything. Then the prota says he will try something. And the Prota comes to the secretary's office and apologizes for what Hu said and starts to do the cleaning in the morning and afternoon. So the guy mentally challenges him. But after 4 days, the guy opened up to the Prota and gives him a cigarette. Then he asks him about Yaochu's situation, and Yaochu convincingly explains everything she has experienced and seems to convince the secretary. On another day, the Prota brought breakfast to the secretary, and they talk about a plan they have to push students to do their own business. But at that, the secretary changes the conversation and hands the Prota a form that Yaochu will have to fill out, as he already confirmed his story with his teacher. Then the Prota asks if he won't need to hand over the other government documents, and the secretary mentions no, since no one will say anything if those papers are true or not. Back in his room, the Prota informs the guys about the co-ed activity with the girls and how he had rejected Hu's proposal, which upset his classmates. So the Prota tells them that he will leave them alone in a dark room watching movies together with the girls they like, so the guys get more excited. Later on, the Prota arrives where Yaochu was and starts to flirt, but then Hu comes to defend her and the Prota gives her the document that the secretary gave him, making Hu more excited. After that, the Prota tells Hu his plan of the activity he wants to do with the girls and boys, and stresses to Yaochu that no one can refuse to participate, so Hu tells him to yell if he tries anything. After this talk, the Prota informs his plan to the other classmates and conducts the drawing of the seats for the movie, so everyone gets excited. However, the Prota determined his and Yaochu's seats to be next to each other, so everyone tries to find their seatmate, and one girl gets angry that she was not next to the Prota. The movie night arrived. The Prota's companions were excited and go to pick up the girls. While the Prota thinks that on that night several couples will be formed, he wonders why Yaochu hasn't come out yet. But at that, she comes out and apologizes. Because she was reading, she missed the time. Then the Prota and Yaochu go to the movies together, and the Prota asks if she wants something to watch the movie. But as she doubts what she wants, the Prota gets annoyed and asks her to wait for him inside. So inside the theater, Yaochu feels that she made the Prota angry. But when he arrives, he scolds her for standing up, and when they go to their chairs, Yaochu stumbles and the Prota rescues her. Then they start watching the Lion King movie, so the Prota must pretend to be impressed, but takes the opportunity on one occasion to hold Yaochu's hand. After the movie, the Prota invites Yaochu to watch another movie another time, but she does not answer him. The Prota tells her that he will take it as yes. But in a moment of confusion, a runner stumbles the Prota and he ends up giving a kiss on the forehead to Yaochu. So she from shock ends up throwing the Prota into the lake, and then the Prota asks her to help him, and once outside, the Prota tells her that he will go and change and tells Yaochu to go to his bedroom, and as the Prota leaves, Yaochu lets out a laugh. When the Prota arrives at his dorm, one of his classmates tells that he saw the movie with his mom because the girl next door gave him the ticket, so the boy cries and the Prota, after laughing, comforts him. In the morning, the rejected classmate sings in spite of the rejection, so the Prota throws a pillow at him and yells at him to shut up. Then another classmate asks him to understand and tells him that a girl from the other university committed suicide for love. Then the Prota thinks it was Rongyu, so he hurriedly goes to ask about her at her university, then impersonates her father, and when she comes down, the Prota tells him that he impersonated her father and asks him to solve their misunderstanding. So the Prota blackmails her and Rongyu lets him talk. So the Prota explains to her what happened that day, and that all he did with Zibo was to play pool. Then Rongyu invites the Prota to study the next day. The next morning, the Prota goes to pick up Rongyu, but the boys come to harass her and give her breakfast, but she rejects them, and after an awkward situation between the Prota and the boys who want to woo Rongyu, she takes him away. Then the Prota throws flirtations at Rongyu as she sits down to study, then asks her if the boys have been proposing to her, as she says yes. So the Prota asks her if she is just using it to not be bothered, and as she affirms it, the Prota tells her that he will help her not to be bothered and kisses her, leaving Rongyu in shock. After this, the Prota writhes in pain, as Rongyu bit him, but he is aware that it was because he stole her first kiss. After one of his classmates noticed it, he comments to him about a class they should attend, but at that a call comes in for the Prota, and Rongyu asks him about his mouth. So the Prota and her have a conversation that the Prota's friend overhears and finds out that the Prota kissed a girl. While Hu tells Yaochu that the grant has arrived and claims that the Prota can be trusted. At that, the Prota enters and embarrasses Yaochu, who remembers the kiss. Then the Prota says that they should give something to the secretary on behalf of the class to thank him for his help for Yaochu's scholarship. Then they tell Yaochu to bring the dried peppers typical of where she comes from, and together with the mustard leaves fill a bottle. After this, Hu tells the Prota that Yaochu cried because she had tried her best to make a typical dish of the mustard leaves and spicy, and no one wanted to eat it, so she. Then the Prota goes to where the dish Yaochu had made was and starts to eat it. Then Yaochu is captivated and gradually the guys start to eat from Yaochu's dish, claiming that it was good, which makes Yaochu very happy so much that she starts to cry with happiness. The weekend came and the prota goes on a date with Rongyu and his teacher's daughter. While they were riding the bus, the teacher's daughter gives her teacher's social network to the prota, so Rongyu gets jealous. When they arrive at a kind of center, and the prota tells Rongyu to buy what she is going to buy and leave. Then Rongyu refuses and says they will go to eat first, so she and the girl insist on eating ice cream, although the line was exaggeratedly long. By the time they eat the ice cream, Rongyu goes shopping for clothes, and after a while she doesn't seem convinced what to buy. Then the sales clerk shows winter clothes to Rongyu. Then Rongyu tells her that a jacket is unisex and they could wear one each. But the prota refuses and the sales clerk tells him that it could be a matching set, so the prota agrees. And the sales clerk tells the prota that a severe temperature drop is coming in a few months. So the prota remembers that many would get sick because of the cold, so he thinks of Yaochu and decides to buy a coat for her too and asks her to take it home. At that, Rongyu comes out with her coat and the prota admires how she looks, so she asks him to try on her coat, starting a weird flirtation between them. After a while, the feather coat arrives to Yaochu and a message from the prota warns that in a few days the cold weather will arrive, so she asks him to wear it or else he will get angry. So Yaochu hugs the coat with a smile. After a few days, the prota returns to the agency where he had applied for a job and they had not given it to him. Meanwhile, Yaochu goes to the store where the prota bought his jacket and realizes the value of it. So he asks the clerk if she has wool and the clerk sells it to him for $15. Yaochu then asks if they are accepting part-time employees, but the clerk says no, so she leaves in embarrassment, only to run into Rongyu on the way out, because it turns out that her coat had come undone from a seam. As the prota tries to convince the manager of the company he had applied to work for, and as the prota stands firm in his stance and in his arguments, that the manager agrees to give the prota the job, impressed by what he is capable of doing, so he gives him his contract. So with his new phone, the prota called his mother to pass his number, but his mother starts with an interrogation. Then the prota calls Rongyu to tell him about his new phone. But when the prota was about to hang up, Rongyu tells him that he saw a girl with the same coat as them, but different color. Then the prota gets scared, but using lip service he gets out of the way. Then the prota feels a cold and fear, wondering if they will have met, so he thinks it will be the end of him. Then he sets out to stop them from meeting and thwarting their plans. The boys in the prota's class are taken to a computer class where they explain to him the origin of computers. But after the lesson, everyone takes advantage of their time to do whatever they want on the computers. The prota's friends invite him to play online, but the prota passes on playing and stays surfing his social network where he receives spam messages when his mother calls him, and messages from his friends arrive relentlessly, which annoys him. Then he considers that it won't be good if Rongyu and Yaochu meet, so he tells Sibo to come to see him on the weekend to introduce him to some girls. At that, the prota sees that Yaochu doesn't do anything with his computer, so he thinks it's because he doesn't know how to use it. Then he decides to approach him. He then approaches her and asks her if she has a social network, but since she is a student, the prota wants to help her create one, so he gets on her back, creating a romantic tension in Yaochu and starts to create a social network for her. He then helps her create her account and password, and once that's done he creates a nickname for her, which Yaochu seems to like. While at home, the prota's mother is nervous about everything the prota is getting, distressed that he is prostituting himself to fat and ugly old women for money. So she decides to go see him on the weekend, while Rongyu gets ready to go see the prota on the weekend as well. The prota meets his friends, but Rongyu asks the prota why he is not wearing his coat. Then the prota tells him that he got it stained, so Rongyu advises him not to wash it so often or they won't warm up so much anymore. Then the prota changes the conversation and takes them to where they can buy food for dinner. Meanwhile, Secretary Yu takes Hu and Yaochu to the prota's store because he asked the favor that they will help him clean. So the Hu feels that she is being used, but since he will buy them duck, they decide to accept. While the guys are eating duck, Rongyu tells him that he carries half duck by himself. But at that comes a red-haired girl who is the prota's partner flirting with the prota, which infuriates Rongyu. Then the prota introduces them as partners, so the girl leaves saying that her partner is prettier than her. But at that, the simp guy asks the prota in an indiscreet way to pass him the redhead girl's phone number or her social network, so the prota passes it to him. When at that her parents arrive, then the prota gets nervous, and after some scolding from the prota's mother, the prota explains how he got her phone number, to then go for a walk to the lake where he meets Secretary Yu and asks him to show them his store, so the prota freaks out. And upon arrival, the prota's mother and Rongyu meet Hu and Yaochu inside, so the prota confirms that that will be the end of him. Upon entering, everything was clean and Yaochu was already gone, so the prota is relieved. Already in the afternoon, he says goodbye to his friends and takes his parents to a hotel to rest, and he returned to the university. Once alone, the mother asks her husband if Rong-yu and her son are a couple, but the prota's father answers that he doesn't know, so the prota's mother mentions that her son was nervous all day. The next few days, the prota went out sightseeing with his parents and guest Rong, and in the evening the kids say goodbye to the prota's parents. Then the prota's parents want to go for a walk to the prota's college, but when they see the lights of their tent on and when they enter, they meet Yaochu, and after chatting, she sends her off to go to sleep, but the prota's mother gets angry because the prota had her working so late. The next morning, the prota meets Yaochu, and Yaochu gives him some gloves for his mother, so the prota freaks out. After that, the prota meets his mother at the hotel, and after Rong-yu leaves, the prota gives her the gloves that Yaochu made for him. Although Rong-yu had given him more expensive ones, and then it was boots that Rong-yu bought for him and Yaochu knitted for him. Then his mother exclaims that she can't go on with that, so she'd better leave the next day. Another time, the prota meets Yaochu keeping the register, but since he sees that he is having a hard time, so he thinks it gets easier if he had a laptop. Then he decides to borrow it from Rong-yu until he can have enough to buy one of his own. Then the prota calls Rong-yu and invites her to dinner, saying he will bring her a gift, so she gets excited. Upon meeting, the prota hands an empty recycling bag he made to Rong-yu, who questions him about the gift, claiming that boyfriends give chocolates to their girlfriends. Then the prota asks Rong-yu to lend him her laptop, but she asks him to beg her. After this moment, they go to eat at Rong-yu's college cafeteria, where several guys stare the prota to death. Then the prota tells Rong-yu that he feels scared, but tells her that for her he will take any risk. But at that moment, a superior of Rong-yu arrives and starts to humiliate them, especially her for her bad taste. Then the prota prepares to greet him and lets him fall in ridicule in front of everyone. So the superior threatens the prota, but the prota returns the threat with a murderous look. After this, the prota and Rong-yu eat an ice cream, and a girl superior of Rong-yu comes up to tell him the gossip about what happened in the cafeteria. And the prota introduces himself, only to find out later that the guy was after Rong-yu. But since she rejected him, she just wanted to make them jealous. After the talk, Rong-yu agrees to lend his laptop to the prota, but first he goes upstairs to erase a diary he had written about him. The prota arrived at his room and finds his red-haired roommate scorned and drunk from a bad love affair, so the prota asks what happened to him. Then his roommate tells him that he met a girl he had a lot in common with, but decided to call her only to realize that she had a boyfriend and still flirted with him. Then the prota comforts him by saying that one day he will get a good woman with whom he will love as ugly and with money as he is, but in that who arrives in a hurry and asks him in the classroom to calm a fight. It turns out that the red-haired girl was being accused of being unfaithful, so the girl slaps him and tells him that she paid him back for what he did to her. Then the guy gets angry and goes to hit her. But at that, the prota arrives and kicks the guy and questions him for hitting a girl, so he orders the door closed and together with his roommates get ready to beat him up. Then one of the guards arrives to punish the guys, but the prota comes out defensively and explains what happened and how some guys came in to abuse a girl, and they defended her. Then the aggressors are kicked out of the university, and the girl thanks the prota for his help. Another day, the prota arrives with Yaochu, who was working with Rong-yu's laptop, but as soon as he arrives, she runs away. So the prota decides to open the laptop and finds a document of him, and when he opens it, he discovers that Rong-yu has been writing about him. So he gets nervous and thinks that Yaochu read it. So he thinks that everything is going wrong for him, and that he receives a SMS from the redhead girl he defended to go see her. And although he doesn't want to, he ends up accepting. Then the girl told him that she didn't think she was going to make it. Then they both start drinking, and the girl is getting closer to the prota. So the prota asks about her face, and she answers that she is better, but jokes with the prota, saying that if it had been Yaochu, the beaten one, he would have killed her assailant. So she comes clean and tells him that she envies that protection, because even though the guy who hit her was her first boyfriend and the only one she has been in bed with, because of a gift he gave her. Then she denigrates herself in front of the prota. Then the prota says he understands her, then tells her that one day they broke up schools and she stayed faithful, but one day she caught him being unfaithful to her, so she walked away from him. She had sworn not to fall in love anymore, but she met him. However, the prota categorizes himself as scum and tells her that he is not the one for her, so she leaves. After this, the prota meets Yaochu and asks her what she is doing outside in the cold. Then she hands him a scarf she had knitted for him. Then the prota bothers her by asking if he attracts her, but the girl gets nervous and the prota puts on the scarf and accompanies her to her bedroom. Since our protagonist has now managed to fall in love with Shang Yanyan without wanting to, she offers herself as a part-time worker to be close to him, although she does not need money but wants love from Chen Hancha. So they talk about that they should wear uniforms to have more publicity. but Chen Hanshan tells them that he has no money to buy them, to which Shang Yanyan offers to send them to make them for free with his family as they have a clothing company, and thus be able to earn the part-time job. For this reason, he gladly gives her the opportunity to work with them to benefit from the clothes she will give them. However, a student appears and informs Chen Hanshan that he must attend an internal affairs meeting without fail. Although he does not want to go, he ends up giving in and attends. In this way, he is informed that this meeting was to remove him from the position of vice minister, for the reason that several colleagues like Suo Zai want to kick him out and humiliate him because they are jealous. So another colleague tries to make him upset so that he does not leave. Thus the meeting begins, and they mainly and only present at the meeting is to inform that the committee of the youth hall decided to expel Chen Hanshan, Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Student Union, for being arrogant, unruly, and suspected of abusing his power as Vice Minister. To which he defends himself by saying that it is unethical to treat him like that if he does not want to leave his position, and asks him to show him the evidence of what he is saying. So Zuo Zio asks Tong Zio to bring the evidence, but this embarrassed does not want to give it to him. Then he takes it from him and notices how the letter they sent to the committee is disapproved, since in the final part it has marked in large appropriate approval. On the other hand, Zio Rongyu, girlfriend of our prota, is in the classroom at her university. When looking out the window, she notices that it is starting to snow, to which come to her mind the images of when she was younger. She remembers how one day just like this, it was snowing and Chen Hanshan had missed class and called her through the window to show her the snowman he had made her, and remembers how she felt after the fact that he made her that detail that left a mark in her heart. So she gets melancholic and thinks about him and decides to call him to tell him that it is snowing. Then she reminds him of what he did to her in the past and also tells him that she remembers how her hands were frozen. However, he plays hard and tells her that it was something stupid. For this reason, she gets angry and tells him that not at all, that all her life she will remember him. So she asks him to come and see together how the snow falls, but he denies it since he will have a training later. This makes her very sad. Now it is shown how our prota is doing in his work affairs, this time in a collective meeting, and they talk about such an electronic products processing factory owned by Hong Kong, which catches the attention of our young Chen Hanshan. So he asks manager Zhang about this business, and he explains to him, then reminds him for some reason that life is more important than money. At that moment, we see how Miss Kong, who was at the table with them, runs out excited to see that snow is falling because she comes from Guangdong, and there it never snows, and adds that seeing the snow fall is beautiful, but it is more important to have someone to see it. There our protagonist realizes his mistake and decides to amend it. For this reason, Chen Hanshan goes to Zio Rongyu's bedroom and calls her on his phone, asking her to come down quickly. Consequently, she comes down, and to her surprise, her boyfriend shows her 2 snowmen he has made and rushes to him, telling him that they are beautiful, and that she was scared because she thought he was no longer the same guy who tried to make her fall in love as a child. Then they slip and she falls on top of him, making a very romantic scene. Now the expected time of Christmas has arrived, and our protagonist has a very complicated dilemma. He does not know which girl to go out with. On the one hand, he has his girlfriend Zio Rongyu, who will surely ask him out. On the other hand, there is Shen Yaochu. He thinks that as she is very sensitive and pitiful, she will ignore this holiday. To his surprise, Shen Yaochu takes courage and invites him to eat, so he has no choice but to accept her invitation. She also gives him an apple as a Christmas gift. So they go to eat a buffet at the cafeteria, and she decides to pay the bill. Meanwhile, his girlfriend bursts his phone with messages because he does not answer, to which he responds quickly and proposes to wait for him in the bedroom. Our prota thinks he will die that day for so much food to eat, in addition to the fear of being caught. Then, already finished his date with Shen Yaochu, he runs out to look for Zio Rongyu since they had 4 minutes left to see each other. He arrives tired and about to vomit for so much food he has not yet digested and having run. But he did not realize that he brought the apple, and his girlfriend asks him if that apple is a gift for her, to which he is frightened and gives it to her as a gift. Later they go to eat a buffet, and she gives him a Christmas gift in a pink gift bag. On his way home, he runs into the shy Shen Yaochu, and in view of seeing the gift in her hands, he decides to give it to her to get out of the way. So he arrives home, and his classmates are having a buffet in the room, and again he thinks of his stomach to die. Consequently, our prota is still exhausted by so many things that has happened, and now studying with Shen Yaochu is fed up and does not want to study anymore. He is impressed that she can get good grades, and she explains to him that it is thanks to leave aside the last questions that are subjective. Chen Hanshan abruptly changes the subject and suggests her to come to his house during the winter vacation. But she refuses because she has to go to her grandmother and take care of her because she is not well since she doesn't work, and the money she earns is sent to her for her studies. So she has collected a lot of money, and wants to go to buy him a lot of food to get better. At that moment, our prota asks her how many hours it takes to get home, and she tells him 30 hours. So he imagines that she will not buy an expensive train ticket so she can sleep in a bed while traveling. Then he asks for her ID card to buy her an expensive ticket so she can go more comfortable. This way he can also take advantage to go with her back to Hong Kong, since his girlfriend is going back with her father, who is coming to pick her up. Then he meets his childhood friend Wang Zibo to leave, and also meets Shang Yanin, who asks for help with his luggage, and she introduces him to her mother, who apparently has a lot of money for the clothes she is wearing in addition to owning a BMW car, and she tells him that she knows him because her daughter has spoken very well of him. So they say goodbye. Then our prota goes to get his luggage, and there they meet Shen Yaochu and introduces her to his friend, who is stunned to see that she is too pretty. As is evident, our prota introduces his friend Wang Zibo to the shy Shen Yaochu, and he is so intimidated by her beauty that he doesn't even know what he is saying, as he mentions that he has known his friend since before he was born, and she is embarrassed. So Chen Hanshin takes him outside and mentions that she is not a stranger to him, implying that he is after her, so his friend scolds him when he realizes that he is playing with two girls at the same time. So he proposes that when they pass by her house, he will introduce her to a cousin of hers to stop his anger. So they go to the train station, and the three get on the train, and Shen Yaochu is impressed to see how they get a very nice room in which they can sleep on the beds while traveling. The train starts and they begin to talk. She tells him that she is very bad at English, and that her college entrance score was 0 because the day of the exam her grandfather died and she had to stay alone with her grandmother at home. At that moment, her friend Wang Zibo makes a comment that if she adds English, she can go to the University of the East. So the prota gets angry with him and sends him to make instant noodles so he won't listen to his conversation with her. Then she cries because she misses her grandfather, and he comforts her by hugging her and tucking her in bed, which makes her grieve a lot. Then his friend introduces them to Huang Hui, a senior student who is in the same carriage as them, which causes no interest in Chen Hanshin, and she answers in a bad mood and sarcastically. Hours pass, and Chen Hanshin notices how his friend talks a lot with this friend of him and has left the door open and cold air enters the room. So he decides to go to get hot water for Shen Yaochu, and takes the opportunity to claim to his friend in a very rude way that if he wants to talk in private, close the door. So Wang Zibo goes to him and asks him not to embarrass him and not to be rude in front of strangers. Then Chen Hanshin claims that he is just trying to protect Shen Yaochu, who is the apple of his eye, and that is why he is angry. Consequently, his friend apologizes because he didn't realize that he had left the door open, so he offers to invite them to dinner that night at the train's fast food restaurant. Later they are all eating and say that the food is passable. Wang Zibo's friend asks the protagonist where he studies, and he notices how she is very good at chatting and recognizes that this is why she gets along so well with his friend. So she comments that she wanted to get into that school he goes to but couldn't get in, to which he comments that he dropped out of school and set up his own business, and she notices that he has managed to buy a phone and a laptop. In this way, Huang Hui arrives at his destination and gets off the train, so his friend is going to miss her and is a little hurt by her departure. Meanwhile, Shen Yaochu brings them noodles to share with them. Finally, they arrive at their destination and take a bus in which there are many people and they have to stand uncomfortably. Then they take a small van that goes near Shen Yaochu's house while Wang Zibo is vomiting all the way. Finally, they run into her cousin, which unfortunately for Wang Zibo turns out to be a girl about 4 years old, and Chen Hanshin tells him ironically that he has the cousin, that he did not lie to him, and that he will introduce her to him later, and this angers his friend. So Shen Yaochu asks his little cousin for her grandmother, and she tells him that she is at the end of the street. Then he takes the opportunity to introduce her to his friends, and our prota greets her just saying hello and smiling. In turn, the girl gets scared and runs away, and he claims to his friend saying that because of him she got scared, but he has not said a single word. Soon they get the grandmother, and she is happy to see her sweet granddaughter, and she introduces them to her friends again. In view of the fact that they are already at Grandma's house, Grandma decides to make dinner for them all, to which Shen Yaochu goes to help her and notices that there are no eggs left in the basket. Then Grandma asks her to take a look at the chicken coop for eggs, but our prota tells her not to bother, that the noodles can eat them alone. However, she replies no. At that moment, her little cousin Ning brings 2 eggs in her hands and gives them to her, so they are served the food. His friend feels sorry that only they have been served the egg noodles, but Chen Hanshin tells him to eat it as a token of gratitude from the grandmother. However, he decides to share his egg to Shen Yaochu, inventing that he really does not want it, so that she eats it without claiming anything, so she shares her egg with her cousin. Already in bed at bedtime, they talk about how he actually planned everything to go to meet the grandmother instead of going to see the city for tourism. So our prota tells him that then he knows what to say when Xiao Rongyu asks them what they did there, and he gets angry because he does not agree with his friend's way of acting. After sunrise, they decide that after eating they will leave, and he tells Shen Yaochu that he will come to pick her up and that he already bought the tickets, so she has no choice but to accept. So they have breakfast, and his friend is sorry to realize that there is only food for the two of them, but Chen Hanshin tells him to eat quickly. For this reason, Wang Zibo decides to give money to the grandmother to buy something, since they arrived unexpectedly, did not have time to bring a gift to the grandmother. But Chen Hanshin stops him and gives it to the cousin so that she can accept it and buy food and a backpack for her. This makes Wang Zibo, who cries. Here they say goodbye sadly, and the Proto promises to come to look for her. Consequently, the Proto arrives at his parents' house, and his mom is very upset with him, so he tries to cheer her up with a comb he brought her as a gift. But she hits him as she has seen his report card and he got 12 in advanced math, so he gets upset about this. Then he decides that since he has a lot of free time, he wants to get his driver's license and learn to drive. So he thinks of Xiao Rongyu's uncle to help him. Then he talks to her by text message and asks her to come the next day to his house to meet his relatives. The next day he meets her uncles, and they comment that they are good friends with her parents. There are a lot of people in that house, including a little cousin of her and her grandmother who is a little deaf, to which he decides to greet her, and she mistakes him for her father. So then he jokingly tells her that he is going to marry Xiao Rongyu, and the grandmother gets upset, saying that he is not very handsome and that he has to work harder, which surprises Chen Hanshin because he thought she was deaf. So they have lunch, and while talking, our daring character makes a move and starts touching his girlfriend's between leg under the table with his foot, which makes her angry, and she goes upset to her room. At that moment he remembers that she is not like Shen Yaochu, that he bothers her by playing this kind of jokes to make her grieve. Then he looks for her and apologizes and gives her the bracelet to forgive him. She accepts and goes back to eat. In view of that, everyone is impressed that he made her upset and become cheerful again. Next they go for a walk. The aunt asks him to take the child with them, but Chen Hanshin cunningly comments that they are going to an internet cafe, so they can't take the child, and his girlfriend then thinks he was very cunning. However, now they are in a bar playing pool, and his friend Wang Zibo tells him how he went to the internet cafe and managed to add Wang Hui to his list of friends. Then Chen Hanshin complains to him because he was too fast and was going to make her run, to which he comments that it was different because when he just added her she started to write him, and they talked a lot until she told him that she had to leave because she was going to take a shower. So our Prota asks him if he received a message from the shower, but his friend tells him that unfortunately he waited too long for her to answer him and he ran out of internet bill. So sadly he was not able to get a message from her. He said that he had to leave because he was going to take a shower, so he said he was going to take a shower. At that moment a yellow-haired guy named Zhang Weilei enters the scene, who is very angry with a group of guys in the bar because they are for him very noisy. They get upset and claim to him that they can laugh as much as they want since it's a bar. This makes this guy even more angry, who intends to go towards them to hit them. But at that moment he is stopped by Chen Hanshin, who tells him not to pretend to be strong again, and not to forget how he almost beat him to death once at the school gate, to which he wants to go to confront him, but is stopped by his older brother Zhang Weiyu, and our Prota claims that if he does not take care of his brother he could end up dead again. At that moment all the Prota's friends are amazed that he knows this boy, and his friend Wang Zibo reminds them how he fought with the boy Zhang Weilei at school, and that he had stopped going to school and to the mixed society. Then they keep talking. Zhang Weiyu and our Prota catch up on their lives, while Wang Zibo keeps telling them the story of how Chen Hanshin became the hero of the school by saving a girl from this Zhang Weilei, who was blocking her at the school gate. A few words were said and they had a fight, and our Prota won as no one could stop him until Zhang Weiyu arrived, and they were able to separate them. In view of this, Xiao Rongyu is amazed that he didn't know anything. Meanwhile, the other man who is with them asks who was that girl he rescued, and he comments that it was one Luo Xuan, who was a sophomore in high school and is now a senior, to which another friend of theirs comments that that girl is a neighbor of hers and that she is going to go to the School of Finance and Economics for the second year, the same school that Chen Hanshin attends, to which they joke about it. Now Zhang Weiyu asks his brother in the street why he keeps talking to his rival Chen Hanshin if he knows that he holds a grudge, for which he replies that they are all college students, and asks him several times if he has already been beaten by college students, until he replies that yes, and not to remind him, and we see how our protagonist left him his phone number. So they start to tease Chen that next year he will have a little sister, referring to the girl he saved in high school, and he argues that everyone will be happy with her, thus making our Xiao Rongyu sting by heavily placing her drink on the table, and commenting that if she can't wait to see Luo Xuan now, then he laughs and tells her that he can't wait to see Luo Xuan. Then he laughs and tells her that he doesn't even know her, that he was just joking, and continues to joke with her by saying that in the future if he wants to get a girlfriend he has to take her as the minimum standard measure, so Luo Xuan doesn't like him at all. And this makes her very upset and calls him shameless. However, one of his friends gets upset and tells him that this girl is one of the best in the program and apparently wishes him to be single in the future. Consequently, the new year 2023 arrives and our prota is involved in the new year dinner with his relatives, and his annoying aunt tells how his cousin Ziohai earns 500 a month and will soon be able to buy a cell phone, to which he thinks in his mind that he has not received messages from his second girl Shen Yaochu. So he lies that he is called by his girlfriend Zio Rongyu on his cell phone and leaves the room. Then his aunt gets upset that he already has a cell phone, as it is very expensive in that year to have one, and scolds his mother because she thinks she bought it for him. But she adds that he bought it himself because of his part-time school job. And this impresses aunt very much because in such a short time he has bought it for himself, and no part-time school job pays so much for it. On the way back home with his parents, he tells them that he plans to go back to school in 2 days, but his mother asks him why he doesn't start school until after the Lantern Festival, to which he argues that he has to go pick up Shen Yaochu from her grandmother and buy tickets to send her back to school, and then go back to school with Rongyu. Then his mother asks him if he can choose one of the two girls, but he evades her by telling her that they are just classmates and that he hopes not to go out with either of them. For this reason, his mother is disappointed and asks her husband to have another son since he is on the wrong track. Back at Grandma's house, he is greeted by his dear new cousin Ning, who tells him that Grandma is at her uncle's house and that Shen Yaochu is cutting firewood, and also secretly tells him that his cousin has been dreaming about him in her sleep. He asks her how she knows, and she tells him that when he was sleeping with her he noticed how she was talking in her sleep and naming him. Just at that moment, our shy Shen Yaochu enters the scene and is carrying a lot of firewood on her back and realizes that her green-eyed love Chen Hanshin has arrived and has come to look for him. She blushes like a girl in love. He complains why she is carrying so much firewood on her back. She is scared and cries, saying that since she is not going to be there anymore, she has decided to carry enough firewood so that her grandmother does not have to carry firewood while she is not there, and promises not to carry so much firewood next time. Then she asks him why he has come so early for her, and he tells her that he was afraid that she would miss him so much, so he came back early. That makes her happy again and she feels grateful. The next day, Shen Yaochu asks her to go by train again. However, he announces that he has already bought the plane tickets in advance and not to worry. Once in the air, she is very scared to be flying and asks him not to fly again, to which he asks her that if she gives him a kiss she will accept. And she gets upset and sad. Then he tells her that he is going to go to the bathroom, but she does not want to stay alone and stops him. Finally, they arrive at their destination, and he accompanies her to her bedroom and asks her to go upstairs and have a good rest. Then we see how he goes in the car back to school with his girlfriend Zio Rongyu, and there is a crowd of people, among them is Shen Yaochu. So he wonders internally why he did not sleep in the bedroom and is out there on the street. At that time, Rongyu's dad, who is driving, comments that there is a girl in front of them and she is dressed just like her, which surprises our prota too much. However, Chen Hanshin feels extremely terrified of this situation that is happening around him. He feels like his smart girlfriend and his father is captain of criminal investigation, so he would rather be in the purgatory of Shura before all this is discovered. So he calls Rongyu so that she turns to see him, to which he lies to her, saying that he has food on his face in order to clean it with a handkerchief, making a scene where he makes the colors rise in his face and his heart accelerates a lot. In view of this, his father, half annoyed, asks him why his hands are shaking, and he says that it is because he is nervous since it is the first time he cleans a girl's mouth. Then he is thankful that Shen Yaochu is no longer in sight, but he does not realize that he is still cleaning Rongyu's mouth and she is in pain. So he asks Zio to switch to the east gate because there will not be many vehicles there. Then they will not have to wait so long for the traffic to finally disperse, and it is already after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He adds that the east gate is near Zio Rongyu's bedroom, so he can take his luggage there personally. Then he notices that Shen Yaochu is still watching the car from afar, but he can't see him because the car has reflective paper on the windows. Finally, they arrive at the east gate and Rongyu asks him why he was acting so weird, to which he lies to him, saying that it was that his feet hurt from sitting for so long and he has them numb. At that moment, a pretty and wealthy woman appears in a sports car and asks them how she can get to 157 Dongshan Industrial Avenue. He quickly makes a map on a small sheet of paper and gives it to the woman, who thanks him and tells him that his girlfriend is the most beautiful girl he has ever seen and continues driving. Then he thinks that if she is going in that direction, she must be the big shot from Hong Kong that they mentioned earlier in the meeting. So his girlfriend, jealous of this situation that just happened, asks him to see if he wants to take a bus to chase her, because he kept looking in the direction that she went. Then he tells her to stop being jealous. He was simply helping her find the direction. But she reproaches him that she had never seen him so proactive before. Then he reminds her that she said she was the prettiest girl he had ever seen, so he must be prettier than her, and that they say pretty people don't get jealous so easily. Now our protagonist meets with manager Zhang and Miss Kong, and they are going to go to see the supervisor of the New Century Electronic Equipment Factory and talk about the work agreement. Then he tells manager Zhang that he must have earned a lot of money last year, for which he answers him affirmatively that all that was achieved thanks to the support of the company, the previous manager Chang and the current manager Kong. So Chen Hanchen asks him to let him drive to have the opportunity to serve the two leaders of the company. However, he claims he can't since he doesn't have a driver's license. But he pulls out his new license and tells him that he got it recently. So he says okay, but drive slowly since a rookie is more likely to get into an accident. So he speedily starts the car and drives like a professional in such a way that leaves them impressed. In turn, he asks Miss Kong what she thinks of his driving. She replies that she feels stable and comfortable. By this strategy, he uses to ask her later if he can be her official driver in the future, to which she argues that if manager Zhang lends her his old Santa Fe, which is very good, he could be. Then he tells her that he is willing and that he would be there as soon as manager Kong calls him. However, manager Zhang is upset because he uses that car for his wife. Then Chen Hanchen decides about it and tells him to forget it. So the manager ends up giving and arguing that he only gave that car to the wife for 2 days, that he will take it back and lend it to manager Kong. While inside, he is fuming because he realizes that this was all a strategy to win him over. Now they talk to Zhao Chunami, and after discussing the delivery schedule and giving him boxes of cigarettes as gifts, he accepts. Then our proto returns to the bedroom, but in the car. Out there, Shen Yaochu is waiting for him, wondering where he got the car. But Chen Hanchen jokes with her, telling her that he saw the car door open and took it, which distresses the poor thing, thinking that he has stolen it. So she answers that they return the car together. But he answers her with a firm no, and she is left thinking. Then he squeezes her cheeks and tells her that he is going to take her to the bedroom. And there he says goodbye to her, but again she asks him to return the car and buy one of their own. However, he asks her not to think about it and sends her to take a bath to rest. After a week, Shen Yaochu's friend arrives and complains to him that Yaochu is arriving because of him at 12 o'clock at night and has been without energy in class. But he is surprised and tells her that she can always come back at 9 o'clock. So they find out what the poor girl has been doing and remembers that recently her clothes smell of oil as in the cafeteria. Therefore, she has not been in the business space since it does not smell like that there. Then they discover that she has been working washing dishes to make money and buy our protagonist a car. In view of this recent problem, Chen Hanchen takes Yaochu to a car dealership to make her see the great value of a car. He shows her a Mercedes-Benz that costs $660,000, and she realizes that only the steering wheel of that car can cover the school tuition for 4 years. So she is shocked. He also shows her a Passat that is the one he just used and costs $225,000. Zero then makes her see that even if she works part-time at the coffee shop, he will buy her the car when she is about her grandmother's age. But she thanks him because since she was a kid, no woman was so willing to buy her anything except for her mom when she bought her a bicycle, and shows her again that there are even cars so expensive that it is practically impossible for her to ever have it. At that instant, a purple-haired girl offers to buy him a car, to which he replies that he has no money now, but she tells him that it doesn't matter, that he will most likely be able to pay for it in the future, which is promising to our protagonist. And she gives him her business card since that very day she is starting to work there, and wants him to be her first customer. At that moment, he realizes the girl's name is Zhang Mingrong, and he is surprised as she is the woman he meets at the bar in the future, and she also gives him a business card. However, he lies and says he has a friend with that name. So they leave. Then our prota gets Sayo Rongyu and takes her in his boss's borrowed car. She on the way realizes that he has been taking another girl by the smell and by the hair he finds in the car. So he argues that it was his boss's wife's hair, and he is her new driver. So jealous, she does not want any more girl to ride in that car as co-driver. Because of the SARS epidemic, Shang Yanyan insists to our protagonist to take a glass of banlangen, which is a tea to relieve common cold symptoms. So he ends up taking it. he realizes that although she listens to him in everything, facing these small problems where he does not want to do things right, she confronts him. At that moment, an unknown call rings on his mobile, and it is from his friend Zibo, who asks him to go to the Western restaurant because he does not have enough money to pay the bill. He goes there and, very annoyed with his friend, ends up feeling sorry for him because he has been stood up and he had already ordered the food, so they sit down and Zibo eats and offers him, but Chen does not want to since he has already eaten. Tells him not to worry about the money. It is only 800 yuan, so he offers to give him more money to invite her to eat again, so he offers to take him home. Seeing that he gets on a car, Zibo asks him astonished that if it is his, but he gets upset and tells him to get on. And on the way he wants to advance the payment and gives him 300 yuan. But Chen Hanshan does not accept it and he insists angrily. So he ends up asking him how he is doing so well in love that he even has 2 girls crazy about him, and he confesses several things about them and tells him that he cannot be too bad or too good with the girls. Of course, with other more rude words. So Zibo returns later to an internet cafe and writes to Huang Hui to have lunch another day. Now the new voice of the radio is heard all over the school. It comes from Jin Yongming. So Shen Yaochu's friend is upset because he has put her there and reminds him that he promised to put her in the student council, to which Chen jokes and makes her angry, and she asks Shen Yaochu to control him. Then Yaochu gives her to drink more banlangen. Then in the company, they propose to Director Zhao the new people in charge of the delivery business. He is upset because they are all like college students, but he accepts and wants to go to a new seafood restaurant and wants Chen Hanshan to take him. But he doesn't really feel like it because it will be a lot of money wasted on that food. So he proposes to eat other kind of things, which is better because of the winter condition. The next day, our leading man's Bo tries to charm the company secretary by giving her a bag of pears to improve her throat, to which she praises him because he is very good at talking unlike his colleagues, and he makes her blush by saying that it is because she is so beautiful that others get nervous when they see her. At that moment, he observes how the woman who asked him for directions in the sports car passes by, and he wants to meet her, but he says to himself that it is not the right time. So then Chen takes the director to have tea with the deputy director. When he gets out of the car, the director leaves his bag and Chen calls him and gives it to him, but he put a tape recorder inside and listened to the whole conversation he had with one Zheng Guanti. For this reason, our prota starts to investigate this Zheng Huanti on the internet, but finds nothing. At that moment, he notices how Shen Yaochu was watching, and he grabs her cheeks and asks her what she was looking at, and she gets scared. Just at that moment, a security guard calls him and tells him that there are 2 people outside looking for him, saying that they are from his city, so he lets them in. However, they turn out to be Zhang Weiyu and his hateful brother Zhang Weilei, and they arrive all beaten and bruised and tell him that Weilei was kicked out of a factory for a fight. He then asks him what they are going to do now and notices how he has his tape recorder nearby. He then offers to give them money to go back to Hong Kong, but neither of them want to go back there, so he offers them work but adds that he is a bit of a bully and that they should do what he tells them to do, and orders Weilei to cut his hair. This boy, on hearing this, gets so upset that he leaves there and kicks one of his pots, even though the poor pot had done nothing to him. So Chen tells Zhang Weiyu that his brother, although he respects him, he is not afraid of him, and if he is not afraid of any person, he is going to cause a lot of trouble all the time. Then the prota tells him that he is going to be the villain to teach his younger brother a lesson. So he calls the guard room and tells them that a hooligan with yellow-dyed hair stole 200 yuan from him, so they arrest him immediately. And if he resists, they will beat him up. So he angrily goes running away from there, shouting that his brother should be careful before Chen sells him. At that moment, he is stopped by the guards and they ask him to hand over the money he stole. So he gets upset and tells them that if he is fucking crazy. So they advise him not to be rude, as they can call the police directly. And he insults them again, saying that he stole from his mother. So they take sides and beat him up with their security batons, capture him and call Chen to tell him, to which he goes there and finds him beaten and tied on the floor. Weilei tells him that he is incriminating him because he did not steal anything. But he drops 2 100 yen bills and says that is how he stole, and tells him that he is his worst nightmare, and proceeds to cut his hair with a pair of scissors. Then he cries a lot, but Chen tells him that in 20 years he will have the right to brag that he has cut his hair, because without knowing it he will be very rich and famous. In view of that, he goes out and tells the guards to leave him locked up that night in the warehouse and gives them a box of those devices that you inhale and exhale. The next day, we see how his brother advises him, and Shen Yaochu offers him food kindly, and Weilei blushes. And at night he wants to tell what happened to his older brother, but he immediately scolds him, arguing that he should not even think about that girl because she is Chen's girl. So if he wants to stay alive, he should not think about her. To which he just says that he thought she was a model and Chen is not worthy of her, and then asks him why before he was not so afraid of Chen, but now he is. So he tells him that after hearing what he said today, he feels like a fool. Han gets a call on his phone. The truth is that Han answers the call from his boss, who tells him that at noon there will be entertainment and that he is invited to pay the bill, and that he will also introduce him to some friends from the factory, to which Han asks where all this will be, to which he tells him that in the restaurant Chuan. When he arrives, he enters with 2 of his friends to the restaurant, where he meets his boss, who at first glance already falls badly, and who says goodbye to his friends from the factory, thanking them for coming, while they tell him that they will pay the bill for the meal. So the protagonist looks at his boss, which is called Zhao, with bad eyes, and thinking that he is a cheat to eat that free food and still take advantage of earning the money of his friends, who have no idea that Han was the one who paid for everything. The truth is that once Han is left alone with his boss, he tells him that the 2 guys with him are from his hometown and he was wondering if he could get them jobs. To which he tells him, almost nonchalantly, that they'll talk later, but to go to the cashier first. However, the prota stands there and goes on to tell him that Yu, one of the boys, has a calmer personality so he could help in the logistics office, and that Wile, the second boy, could be a janitor since he is younger and in good health. However, the angry boss tells him to go to the cashier's office, but the prota does not give up and mentions that he tells Mrs. Gendy, who is everyone's boss, that he is always talking behind her back, which ends up angering the boss, who feels a bit threatened since Han is just a messenger, so he tells him that he has no evidence to prove that. Han takes out a tape recorder in which Zhao can be heard cursing and saying barbarities about Mrs. Gendy. Hearing all this, the boss makes a face of tragedy, surprised that Han has these recordings, so he tries to take it away, but Yu holds him so that he doesn't do it. Then Han sits down as if he were the boss and threatens to hand over the original recording to Gendy, since he knows his arrival time at the factory and also where his office is. So in the end, and despite the boss's tantrum, he ends up giving in to the conditions set by Han, who tells him that he will have to give the kids a job and return all the money he has eaten from him for a total of 10,000 yuan, for which Zhao replies that he doesn't have that much money, so the prota gives him 3 days to get it or else he will take the recording to Gendy. After this, Han and his friends leave the place, and while riding in the car, the prota tells the boys that it would have been easy to get them jobs in other stores, but he also explains that the factory run by Zhao can become a gold mine in about 2 years, and that's why he wants them to work there too. Meanwhile, Zhao in his office is all disappointed, admitting that he underestimated Han, and that now he has only 2 options left. On the one hand, he can admit his mistake and blame Han without knowing what will happen in the end, or on the other hand, he can keep pretending and hope that Han will keep his promise to give him back the recording. Just at that moment, his secretary appears and tells him that Han is doing nothing around the administration building, so Zhao gets up furious and super worried about what Han can do, because if he gives him away he could go to jail. So among all this thinking, he blames Han, who has a respiratory disease, similar to COVID, to keep him busy for a few days. Meanwhile, our Han takes a little peek, and just after doing so, some nurses with masks and everything interrupt him. So they get to talking to Chief Gendy, who, upon seeing her, Han admits that she's very pretty. Also, she talks to the nurses, who are willing to cooperate, and tells them to please don't turn off the electricity in their administration building, so I don't really know if they are actually nurses or what. The truth is that Han calls his girlfriend, who is very pretty and with whom he had arranged to have dinner, and tells her to excuse him, but that he is in quarantine. To which she starts yelling at him, telling him that these are just excuses not to be with her. However, Han tries to fix the situation by explaining that it is true, but the girl starts crying and tells him that she will go to his place, but Han replies that there is no point and that he should stay in his bedroom. Then, Han calls his parents and also tells them that he is in quarantine for a respiratory disease and everything else, which makes them worry, but Han tries to reassure them. And just at that moment, Han receives a call from Shi, who is his girlfriend, where he manages to listen to a conversation she has with her friend, telling her, with tears in her eyes, that she will go to the protagonist. However, her friend tries to stop her by telling her that it is very dangerous because the disease can kill her, but as she is not afraid of death, she decides to run away. Meanwhile, Boss Gendy approaches Han and invites him to her office, to which he accepts. Upon entering, Gendy apologizes for the mess she has and tells him that she is not used to using the secretary. She also grabs his coffee cup and asks for his name, to which the prota tells him and mentions that he is at his company's courier post under Zhao, who is out of line with his employees. In addition, he gives him the recording of the things Zhao said, but in response Gendy gives him some reports with Zhao's accounts which make it clear that Zhao is a swindler. It is then that Han understands that Gendy has always known that Zhao is a cheat. At that, right through the window, they both see Zhao trying to flee with a suitcase, but as he tries to do so, Mr. Lin along with 2 bodyguards stop him and not to thank him. After this, the protagonist's girlfriend arrives at the building along with her friend, But the Prota apparently doesn't like her being there, because instead of reacting he remains silent without saying anything. So Gendy starts to tease him, saying that he didn't think he would be a scum by having 2 girlfriends, which puts the Prota somewhat overwhelmed, not knowing what to do. Meanwhile, Shen tries to talk to the guards to get them to let her through, but fails to do so she eventually sits on the sidewalk crying non-stop. Then pulls out her phone and calls the Prota to let him know she's already there, to which he tells her to find somewhere to sit and wait for her parents so she can go with them. However, Shen tearfully tells him that she doesn't want to leave without him, so he decides to stay there until dusk, where some friends and Han's parents manage to get to the building. At that point, Han calls Shen again to tell her to go with her parents, but she yells at him not to try to take her away from him. However, her friends finally convince her to return home by promising to come back for Han the next morning. But before leaving, another girl with a jacket almost identical to hers appears and tells her that she is very pretty, which makes everything uncomfortable for a moment since they are both looking for the main character, so Shen's friend tells her that they should go back home. That's when one of her friends calls Han and tells him that she and Rongyu, who is the other girl in the jacket, have just met, which makes Han worry since that wasn't in his plans. So Gendy starts listening to the audio from the security cameras which are outside the building, where they realize that Rongyu found out that Shen was Han's girlfriend when she wanted to enter the building. So Gendy asks Han what he plans to do now. He also takes out a cigarette and starts smoking to think better, saying that when he gets out of there he won't continue being his messenger or picking up his deliveries, to which Gendy tells him that he can't smoke there. But the angry protagonist ignores him and keeps talking ugly to him. So Gendy takes out one of those old-fashioned guns, but they do hit hard, and puts it in front of Han, so he stops talking so much nonsense and drops the cigarette out the window, saying that it is bad for your health. Then Gendy mentions to him that it's not his fault, since it was surely destiny that Shen and Rongyu met. Then, as night falls, Han writes to Shen's friend to find out how Shen is doing. When she answers, the friend tells her that Shen is taking a bath and that they already ate. Besides, she takes the opportunity to ask Han about Rongyu, to which he replies that it is none of her business. Having said this, the girl replies that she should not call again so that Shen can rest. When she hangs up the phone, this girl with glasses tells him that it seems as if she is talking to her boyfriend, to which she replies that she should be blind to choose a scum like the main character as her boyfriend. The next morning, both Shen and Rongyu return to the building to wait for the protagonist, and the protagonist's parents also arrive. But in doing so, the father asks Han's mother what she intends to do, to which she tells him that in the afternoon she will go out with Rongyu and also bring something to eat for Shen, since they are both waiting for Han and she can't think of what else she can do. On the other hand, Han gets up and asks Gendy how Shen and Rongyu are dressed, to which she replies that they both have their down jackets. She also tells him that tomorrow he will be able to go out, but Han confesses that he doesn't really want to do it since he knows what awaits him outside. But arriving the next day, one of the nurses measures her temperature and tells her that it is normal, and that the only thing she has is that her heart is a little accelerated, which is understandable since Han knows what she has to face. The truth is that as he walks to the exit door, Gendy encourages him by telling him not to be afraid. So when he opens the door, his friends, his parents, and especially Rongyu hug him tightly as if he were a Marvel Avenger, which makes Han a little uncomfortable since he doesn't want to draw too much attention to himself. Upon seeing this, Rongyu stares at him and tells him that if he wants he can go see Shen, and not to worry about them since she will say that she has gone to change clothes and they will wait for him at the hotel. Hearing this, the Prota is extremely surprised and runs off in search of Shen. As he does so, Rongyu can't hold back the urge to cry as she watches him walk away. Later, Han finds Shen crying on a table, so he approaches her and tells her that he is sorry, to which she asks him if she can call him Zio Chen, to which he replies not to call him Chen. But Shen asks him if he has already told that to other girls, to which Han replies that she is the first one, which ends up blushing a little Shen, who after that says nothing and stops crying. Consequently, the Prota changes his clothes and goes to the hotel, mentioning that the matter with Shen is already solved and that he only needs to take care of Rongyu. Arriving at the Grand Hotel, Han is shocked to see so many people in the restaurant, to which a man tells him that apparently he is the first college student to have survived the epidemic, and that is why so many people are curious. At that, Rongyu sees him and approaches Han. Seeing them so close together, Rongyu's mother asks her husband if her daughter and Han have something more than friendship, to which he replies that there is no need to overthink it, since after all they both went to the same high school for 3 years. After they finish eating, Rongyu's parents get into their car and leave, which leaves our Prota alone with Rongyu, so they both take the opportunity and take a little stroll through the Yuwu Commodity Center. While there, Rong-yu comments to the protagonist that even though they've known each other for a long time, he thinks it's strange that they don't have a picture together, that it's as if they've never met. So Rong-yu asks a guy to please take some pictures of him and Han together, so he takes out his camera, but when he is about to take the picture, Rong-yu starts crying non-stop. However, he manages to wipe away his tears by telling Han that nothing is wrong and that he is just happy to see him safe. After this, they both continue walking. So Rong-yu takes the opportunity to tell Han about everything she has imagined with him. So she starts by telling him that she has imagined herself wearing a small brace while watching movies with him, and that in winter she sees herself reading a book in bed while dyeing her pajamas with his scent. She also confesses to him that girls love fantasy. In response, Han tells her that even that can come true, but Rong-yu admits that she is not yet willing, as she has not been able to take time to enjoy a good tea with him in a new store that opened or go to see the rapeseed flower that grew in her homeland, as she wanted to do all this in the summer vacation, but has not been able to. Hearing all this, Han does nothing but tell her that she can also call him Chen, to which Rong-yu begins to cry again and tells him that she is leaving, and although the protagonist tries to hold her, she lets go and leaves. And so a long time passes until June, where Han learns that Rong-yu has already become a professional since she went from being in international trade to business law. This leaves the protagonist a little bewildered since it seems that he doesn't even know what to do with his life. After a while, several students arrive in the city to register at the university. In that, the prota sees two guys fighting over a girl about who saw her first, and just then he is approached by a girl. So this, even with his eyes closed, tells him that if he wants information, go elsewhere. But when he opens his eyes, he realizes that the girl is actually his sister, so he is speechless and then asks him how he got there, to which she replies that she is registered at the university. And she also tells him that she had to get 550 on the test to enter the Institute of Finance and Economics, which leaves the protagonist not knowing what to say and wishing to be struck by lightning, since in reality she is not his sister, but she is also chasing him to be his girlfriend. Consequently, the girl, named Luo, grabs his water bottle and starts drinking from it, to which he tells her that he is drinking from that water, but Luo replies that it doesn't matter since she is not disgusted by it and that she is very thirsty. This annoys Han a little and he calls Jin, who is one of his friends, to take Luo and her mother to the student bus and to tell him where the university is. So Jin introduces himself to Luo and tells her that he will gladly give her a ride, and also mentions that he is Han's dorm mate. Upon hearing this, Luo tells him that he can also call her younger sister, but since she will be Han's girlfriend, he might as well call her sister-in-law. At that, the prota tells Jin that she has a problem in her head, which angers Luo, who claims that she has made all that trip for him. What makes the moment tense is that Jin tells Luo that they better leave, but before leaving, Han makes it clear to Luo that he is one of the best students in the university, and that he has won several titles for being an exemplary student. In addition, he tells him to go to dinner in the evening with his girlfriend. Having said all this, Jin grabs Luo's suitcase and takes her and her mother to the bus. As they walk, Jin asks Luo why she is not angry to know that Han has a girlfriend, to which she replies that she already knew that Han has a girlfriend, but that no matter who she is, she will manage to keep him away. Then, Luo asks him why Han has so many honors in the university, to which Jin answers that he is the man of the moment. Since the first year he entered, he proved to be a great leader and could even obtain the model of entrepreneurship for university students. Besides, in that year he could also enter the student union. Hearing this, Luo tells her mom that her boyfriend is amazing, to which Luo tells her to stop talking nonsense, and that if she doesn't learn to be shy, she will get mad at her. But continuing with the conversation, Jin tells her that if she thinks Han is amazing, she should meet his girlfriend, who is the most beautiful in the university, which makes Luo change her face and ask him where she can meet her, to which he tells her room 101 of Building F. So Luo arrives just there, where he meets the apparent girlfriend of the protagonist, who asks him if he wants to send something by courier. But as Luo acts crazy and starts to say that her boyfriend's store is very nice, to which the short-haired girl tells Simon that Luo seems to be another fan of the prota, and that she seems to be in her first year, to which she replies that once upon a time, girls who studied medicine also came to confession. Upon hearing this, Luo asks them why they are not surprised that she is there, to which the short film tells her that she is not the only girl who wants to be with Han, but that she will not be able to captivate him as he is an impossible mountain to climb. He also mentions to her that she is very pretty, but in comparison to the girl with the surname Zio, she lags behind. However, not knowing who Zio is, the short movie lets him see that Zio is the girl there with her, and that in matters of personality and body Zio is better than her, which depresses Luo a bit, who looks all flat, but runs out of the room saying she will keep playing to see who wins. However, when she comes out, she notices that it's raining, so Zio approaches her to give her an umbrella, but Luo doesn't take it and decides to get wet. Then the short film tells Zio to stop being so nice. On the other hand, the student council president, Tianyu, tells Han that he has the duty to give the speech for the freshmen, and that if he can't think of what to say, he should make up something like that to fool people. In addition, he asks him to join the union, to which he asks him what things he should do in that position, to which Tianyu explains, and the prota is convinced to help him, so they say goodbye. Then, the short-haired girl arrives, so the prota takes the opportunity and asks her if she would like to be part of the union or vice president of the department, to which she opens her eyes and asks if she can be in both positions, which the prota thinks is a bit cheeky. Once in his dorm room, Han starts talking about the new students with his partner, who tells him that the ones he helped today were so stingy that they couldn't even buy him a bottle of water. At that moment, Han's phone interrupts, notifying him that he has a call from his father. Han gets up and answers the call. Then the father tells him that he met Uncle Zio in the morning, who is actually Rongyu's father, but that he was very strange and greeted him with a very cold face, which makes the protagonist remember that he is surely upset about what he did to Rongyu. So he decides to go to Hong Kong to apologize to him personally. So he takes 2 bottles of liquor with him to make amends, which works out very well for him despite the bitter face the guy makes when he arrives at his door. However, he lets him in and tells him that he is alone in the house since Rongyu is at school, and the others are out. Consequently, he grabs one of his own bottles of liquor and tells Han to sit down to talk. So he starts by telling him that he is an idiot for cheating on his daughter, to which Han tries to explain, while giving him more to drink, that what happened was just a misunderstanding, and asks for help so that Rongyu won't feel upset anymore. But suddenly, Rongyu falls on his head on the table pretending to be drunk, which Han doesn't believe, but as he pretends very well, Han has no choice but to take him to his room and put him to bed. But when Han leaves his house, he gets up saying that the prota is very cunning but he won't fall into his trap. Besides, he realizes that Han left the whole house super clean, which annoys him even more. After this, the prota arrives at his parents' house where he tells them that he went to apologize and that he drank some liquor, to which his father tells him that it's okay for him to come back another day and apologize better. On the other hand, his mother tells him to take a bath while she prepares him a soup for his hangover. So after this, Han sits down to read a Dragon Ball comic book, who by the way seems super fan of this, until his mother comes up to him and tells him that if he has already decided to be with Zio Shen, try to get along with her, to which he replies that he has not done that, and that he simply had a misunderstanding with Rongyu that he has to solve. This provokes his mother to stand up and tell him to stop being a bully, and that if he wants to eat soup, he should go to the kitchen. And well, whether he has eaten soup or not, the other at the opening ceremony for the new students, the prota begins to give his welcome speech, but he makes it so long that some students begin to complain. And others, like Luo's case, say that Han will be her new boyfriend, which her friends find super crazy since Han has a girlfriend, but Luo says so will her boyfriend. In addition, she bets with one of her friends to make Han enter her bedroom, but before they can continue talking, they are sent to silence. But immediately, Han finishes his speech and everyone grabs where they want, while he arrives at Dongda University, where he sits on a bench and remembers that right there he had come with Shen to eat ice cream. But his memories are cut when this girl with blonde hair arrives, who tells him that he had not seen him for a long time, and asks him if he still loves to lie to women, to which he responds that what he means, to which the girl tells him that more than a year ago she gave him her bedroom number to call her and never called her. But the protagonist goes crazy and avoids the question by taking out a cigar to smoke it, in that the girl invites him to dinner and Han ends up accepting. After dinner, the prota calls his friend Zubo and tells him to organize a dinner with Rongyu without telling him that he is going to come to surprise him, to which he responds that Rongyu is very intelligent and will know that all that was planned, to which Han calls him an idiot and tells him that the only reason why he has not been able to kiss his girlfriend Huang is because he does not understand women. So he explains that his intention is for Rongyu to realize that he will not give up. In addition, he gives some suggestions to Zubo so that Huang responds to the messages, since sometimes she says that he is bathing, but it is a lie. Therefore, Zubo agrees to help Han and also goes to a cyber where he writes to Huang, who ends up answering him. Therefore, the next day Han tells Nai, the head of the university's external relations department, to replace all the members, which she does not think is a good idea. So the student president, Tianyu, tells both of them that they should get to know each other slowly, but Han responds that he does not have time to meet anyone, so he has decided that whoever does not obey will be replaced, and that's it. And as he said, he also fulfilled it, since with his position as minister, he ended up firing everyone from the department, so days later Nai gives him a list with the new recruits. And if that were not enough, the first name on the list is Luo, which surprises the prota, but Nai tells him that Luo is super bright and also very beautiful. However, Han, who already knows Luo, asks Nai if she can be fired, to which she tells him that if he does, the other students will speak badly of them. So the prota stays calm and does not fire anyone. Then Nai tells him to remember that at night he has to attend the dinner where he will present himself with the new recruits. At night, Han sits at the table with the new members, who introduce themselves one by one. When Luo's turn comes, she says her name and adds that she entered that university for a boy. And the most curious thing is that she says all this looking only at Han. She also continues to tell that boy, who is obviously the prota, protected her from a boy who always bothered her. So since that day she has not stopped thinking about him. But the most painful thing is that now that boy has a girlfriend, which awakens in the other members' comments telling Luo to get rid of the boy's girlfriend, and other things like that, while the protagonist pretends to be innocent. But even Nai realizes that Luo is actually referring to him. After such an emotional introduction, Han goes home and Luo stands by his side to accompany him. On the way, she asks him if he would have fallen in love with her if Shen did not exist, to which he says no, since he does not like it that way, which leaves Luo paralyzed without knowing what to think. But the next day, Luo enters room 101 where she meets Shen and tells her not to be nervous since she only wants to invite her to eat, which surprises Shen. However, she accepts and together they go to a restaurant. Being there, Luo begins to see that when ordering food, Shen is somewhat different from other people since he repeats what he is going to ask for one and others in order to be able to eat everything. He also sits in one of the most secluded seats to eat quietly. Finishing eating, Shen tells her that she will go buy some fruits, to which Luo tells her that she too, so they go together. Arriving at the store, Shen buys 2 large apples and 2 small ones, which seems super strange to Luo, who asks her why she buys them like that, to which she responds that the big ones are for Han and the small ones for her. Once all this is done, they return to room 101 where Shen grabs one of the large apples and begins to peel it. Seeing that, Luo believes that Shen will eat the apple and that he only keeps the small ones when he is with Han to win his affection. But when he finishes peeling it, Shen gives the apple to her, which leaves Luo open-mouthed. And while eating it, she asks Shen to please stay away from Han, stating that no one loves him more than her. But just then Shen's friend arrives and asks Luo what he does there, to which she simply gets up and leaves. On the other hand, Zubo and another friend of Han wait in a cafe for Rongyu to arrive. But before her arrives the prota, who pays the waitress with the money of his friend, who is very surprised to see him and who also gives it stingy. Then, Rongyu arrives with his roommate named Bayan Shishi, greeting Zubo and the other boy and ignoring Han. Then, when they were all seated, that supposed friend of the prota asks Rongyu why he has changed universities, taking into account that it was in the same as Han. To which Rongyu responds that he simply realized that he wanted to study another subject, so he ended up deciding to change universities. Upon hearing this, the prota inside himself realizes that Rongyu is not telling the truth, acknowledging that it is his fault. Consequently, Rongyu tells Zubo that if he wants to smoke he can do it, to which the prota also encourages him to smoke, so Zubo ends up taking out a cigarette, which seems not to please Bayan very much. On the other hand, the prota also does the same, but Gao, his friend, tells them both that smoking is not gentle, to which Han tells him that he has not changed at all and that he is still that gentleman who does not smoke or drink alcohol, which makes Rongyu laugh, who mentions that Bayan is single, to which she replies that she is too. And just at that moment, 2 boys appear who begin to throw compliments at Rongyu, saying that she is very beautiful and buying her chocolates. And after 20 minutes 3 more people tried to approach Rongyu to talk, so Han starts thinking about what to do so that the boys stop approaching him. But at that, Gao raises his voice and tells them to take Rongyu and his partner to the bedroom, which dislikes Han, who realizes that at no time did Rongyu turn his face to see him, so he sits on a bench next to Zubo to smoke. While there, Zubo asks him to continue insisting to Rongyu throughout his life, to which he responds with another question, and as usual he does not answer what he and we also want to know. At that, she receives a message from a lady named Kong, who asks him to pick her up at a hotel. Then, he begins to remember that a few days ago when he was with one of Kong's employees, Han told him that he wanted to be the main delivery agent in the universities, to which he, after thinking about it for a moment, finished accepting his request, but also told him that he had to talk to Kong to see what she thought. So the prota decides to pick her up, leaving Zubo on the bench. Arriving where Kong is, Han realizes that she is totally drunk, while his companions invite her to continue drinking, but Kong refuses his invitations and gets in the car for Han to take her home. Once on the road, Kong gives the location of his apartment to the prota and tells him that if he vomits he will have to clean the car. Arriving at the apartment, Han carries her, as she cannot take a single step alone. Upon entering, Kong lets out a large rainbow-colored vomit which Han ends up wiping away after leaving her lying on the bed. After this, the proto approaches him and begins to unbutton his clothes, but just then Kong grabs his hand, thinking that this one would do crazy things to him. But our Han is not like that, so he lets go of his hand, and he finishes taking off his jacket. Then, she leaves the room and lies on the sofa stating that she has to stay so that she realizes that he picked her up. In the early morning, Kong gets up and sees the proto on the sofa, so he increases the power to the air conditioner and places a sheet on Han. The next day, Kong wakes Han up and tells him to brush so they can eat something, to which he gets up and tells him about his plan to become a delivery manager. But Kong tells him that he does not think it is a very good idea, which saddens the proto, who decides to leave his apartment disappointed. But before doing so, Kong changes his mind and accepts his request since he realizes that he is not like the other men who have wanted to take advantage of her. Later, while Han is in room 101 with Shen and her friend, she asks him if he wants to eat fruit, to which he almost uninterestedly answers yes, so she peels an apple and gives it to him. Then, the short movie calls Han aside and tells him that Shen was waiting for him until 11 at night, to which he does not say anything since he knows that if he says that he spends the night at another woman's house, it may be his end. In addition, he also informs him that a first-year girl, Luo, has been talking to Shen, to which Han acknowledges that he has to talk to Luo since she can screw up and make him look bad. Therefore, the short movie tells him not to make Shen feel bad, to which the protagonist thanks him for reminding him. Returning to Shen, Han lies to her, telling her that last night he was in internet cafe, also asks him to tell him how he feels, to which Shen blushes a little. But in the end he tells her that he wants to have a phone, to which Han asks him why he wants one, to which she responds that when he is not there she wants to hear his voice. Upon hearing that, the proto asks her if she wants something else, to which she says no, and that they better go to eat. But before doing so, Han takes out a phone and hands it to her, telling her that it is for her and that she already has several contacts saved. Therefore, Shen blushes all over and tells her that she will only be able to remember her number. That said, Han approaches him and begins to massage his cheeks and tells him that at night they can go to the cinema to watch a movie together, which seems like a very good idea to Shen. Then, the proto approaches him a little closer and kisses his forehead, and instantly they give him more desire, so he ends up biting his cheek, making Shen look like a tomato. And we'll see what happens in the next video. Hit the like button and subscribe if you like it, and if you want the next part, write in the comments the word Reborn 2.0. Thanks for watching.